Hello, folks. This is Mike Jenkins back with episode 3 of my review show. And I have 3 topics to go over today. It's been a little bit. I had a trade show to go to last week, and I had projects that I had to get out of the way before I could get back to my shows here. So I'm back home, everything's back in place, and on with episode 3. The topics that I'm going to go over this time around, topic number 1 will be about the 2018 comic book movie schedule. I haven't sat down and made a comparison of previous years, but the rollout for 2018 looks to be pretty healthy. It's not anemic. Uh, in a lot of the titles that I'm seeing look pretty promising. Don't have my hopes up high, but I never have high hopes for anything, just so I don't walk out too disappointed. Um, but the lineup looks pretty good. So we'll be going over that. Topic number 2 is about the CW DC comic book shows. Um, they've just started airing this week, and I'll be talking a little bit about Supergirl, The Flash, and my thoughts on the new Black Lightning series that debuted this week. Topic number 3 is Star Wars. We've got Solo releasing May this year. That's the traditional month for the release of Star Wars movies historically. So it's good to see a Star Wars movie being released in May. And there's news on that front. Some footage was shown in Munich to an audience, and it looks promising. And there's also Rian Johnson talking about his new trilogy, so we'll be going over that. So here we go. Let's jump into it. Topic number 1. So we have the 2018 comic book year starting in February here with Black Panther. And Black Panther is a Marvel character. He's an age-old Marvel character. He happens to be black. And so this is, I would say it's a big deal. We haven't had a black superhero headline a film since Blade, Wesley Snipes' Blade movies. And Wesley Snipes, or the Blade movies, could possibly be looked at as the starting point for our contemporary era of comic book movies. I would say that, some big leaps were made with films like Spider-Man and the X-Men, which came a little bit later, but Blade did help to establish a certain texture, a certain tone and foundation that later films uh, possibly took after. But the point being, we haven't had a black superhero headline films for quite some time now. And for the Marvel or the Disney Marvel cinematic universe, this is a big deal. And the movie looks pretty solid. I would say that the previews have got me really amped up, and I can't wait to go see the film in theaters. And I've tried to spread the word about it on my personal profile page. It looks to be a solid story. It's it's the struggle of taking over a kingdom and having that position possibly taken away from you. The villains look pretty solid, so I'm looking forward to Black Panther in February. And of course, that's Black History Month, so it's an appropriate time to release that film. Uh, the next film that I had in the lineup was New Mutants, but because of some things going on over at Fox, or 20th Century Fox, New Mutants had to be pushed back to 2019. It was originally slated to be released in April of this year, but New Mutants is being pushed back to 2019. By that point, Fox is said to be merged with Disney. So I'm not sure what the fate of that film is going to be at that point, but we'll see what the year brings and how things roll out next year. So that takes us to May, which is pretty much the beginning of the summer season. And that brings us to Avengers Infinity War. So this is going to be a big film. It's going to show off a lot of old and new characters. And we're finally going to see Thanos in action going after the Infinity Gauntlet. So we'll see how that story plays out. There's supposed to be some deaths in this film. So the theory goes that this is the time in the Marvel cinematic film series where we're going to start seeing older characters getting phased out and newer characters being phased in. So it's looking like characters are going to either die off, older characters are going to die off, or they're going to retire in the story and perhaps even pass on their mantle. And then we're going to see newer characters step up and fill in the roster for the older characters and in place of the older characters. So that's going to be a big event this summer, and I'm looking forward to that one. In June, we get Deadpool 2. And a lot of people have been worried about this whole 20th Century Fox merger with Disney. That is going to take place over the course of the year. There's not going to be an official merging until later in the year, if at all. The FCC has to approve that merging or finalize that merging. So until that happens, 20th Century Fox is functioning as its own entity right now. So Deadpool 2 will not be affected. It's going to be rated R, just like its predecessor. And I do believe that even when, or if and when, the 20th Century Fox merger happens with Disney, Disney is going to find a way to maintain its rated R films. There are so many properties in the 20th Century Fox library that are rated R properties that historically have suffered from being watered down by a PG-13 rating, taking it down from a rated R to a PG-13. So franchises like Aliens and Predator have tried to do PG-13 films to broaden their audiences, and they were dismal failures. So I would say that it behooves Disney to maintain a place for its rated R properties. It's done that in the past, and I don't see why it wouldn't maintain a place for its rated R properties going forward. Aliens, Predator, Deadpool, these types of movies need to be rated R, and I don't see any reason why Disney wouldn't be understanding of that and do what they can to maintain that. So Deadpool 2 is coming to us in June. Interesting thing about that is Josh Brolin will be playing Cable in this movie. And Josh Brolin also plays Thanos in the Avengers Infinity War movie. So, it's not like we're going to notice that much. I think with whatever they do with voice reverb, as well as, computer generated effects and makeup, you won't be able to sit down and tell that they're the same actor. And, Josh Brolin is a pretty good actor, so I think he'll do a good job playing both characters and doing them both justice. Also to debut in Deadpool 2 is a character named Domino. Coming in July is Ant-Man and Wasp, which is the sequel to the previous Ant-Man movie. That one, as with many of the Marvel movies, was a sleeper hit, in my opinion. Um, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Wasp is brought into the storyline and how this duo does together in this film. It's the first film after Infinity War, and it'll start the next phase of Avengers movies. In October, we're getting Venom. Venom is well into production right now, and recently a rumor has come about that Spider-Man will be getting a cameo in this film, which I think is a very good idea. Previously, it was expected that Spider-Man would not appear in the film. They would probably do something like uh, do some kind of nod or mention to him, because Venom is in the Spider-Verse, but they're setting this character up uh, so that he's not the traditional Venom that we would expect to see right off the bat. So, uh, particularly in the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 3 film, Venom was Eddie Brock. And Eddie Brock is known as being the first Venom that we encounter. But he's not the only Venom, and he's not the last Venom. So the Venom being played by Tom Hardy in this movie that's coming in October is actually going to be a mashup of two characters, which is Eddie Brock, as we know, and another character named Flash Thompson, who takes on the Venom symbiote. And Flash Thompson is a government agent, and that is how they're going to explain how the symbiote is bonded with this character, and the villain or villains are going to be other symbiotes, uh, particularly Carnage. And it'll be about how this government agent bonds with the symbiote and goes after these other nastier, villainous symbiotes. And rumor has it that the story is going to take place in San Francisco. If they have done the story right, I think it could work. I have fears for this Venom movie, particularly because of how it was handled, how the character was handled in the Spider-Man 3 film, and trying to do Venom without Spider-Man just comes off as a bit tricky to me. It's like doing a Lex Luthor film or doing a Joker film and not having Superman or Batman have anything to do with it. It's almost like, how could you, how could you do a film without the protagonist good guy counterpart? Although Venom has his own comic book, he's gone on to become his own anti-hero, so we'll see how they handle it, and hopefully they handled it right. In November, we get X-Men Dark Phoenix. And this film is a follow-up to X-Men Apocalypse. And it will do the story of Jean Grey becoming the Phoenix or the Dark Phoenix. My fear with this is we're going to get a repeat of what happened in X-Men 3. Now, I've read some things about this film having some cosmic elements in it, which does harken back to the original Phoenix Saga story. So I'm hoping that they are being more truthful, more committed to the original material. I honestly think that Dark Phoenix storyline should be at least 2 films, if not a trilogy in itself. Who's to say? I don't know if the next X-Men trilogy of films actually covers the entire Dark Phoenix saga. That's really what I'm hoping for. Apocalypse did give us a little glimpse or hint of Jean Grey having the Phoenix ability. Um, and I'm just hoping that they handle this story correctly. I'm really hoping that they break it out in the next X-Men trilogy is about the Dark Phoenix saga. We got our First Class trilogy, and I'm hoping the next batch of films is about this storyline and they do it justice. And then that brings us to December, which is Aquaman. Jason Momoa did a good job with that character in Justice League. Justice League is questionably uh, um, an audience splitting film. Some audience members love it, some audience members don't like it for multiple reasons. But Jason Momoa is often quoted as having done a good job with the role. And the director seems to have handled the material properly, and it looks to be a solid piece. And so, that's all the way off until December. I'll definitely be seeing all these films in the theater, and I can't wait for all of them. Those are all the movies or comic book movies coming out in 2018. There are a couple of animated pieces that I didn't talk about. We are getting a sequel to The Incredibles this summer. And we're also getting a Miles Morales Spider-Man animated movie this year as well. But I didn't go into those because they're not live action films. So, that's up to you to classify them. And so now on to topic number 2. Topic number 2, we're going to talk about the CW comic book or DC comic book shows that have finally debuted this year. Monday we got Supergirl, and they didn't debut. It's like a mid-season premiere. They went on hiatus for a couple months there, and so now we're back into the thick of it. And in the last episode, or last group of episodes, we came to know a villain named Rain, who ended up, and this is spoiler warnings for people who haven't been watching the series. So if you haven't been watching the Supergirl series or this particular season, then be warned. But this season has introduced us to a new villain who is Kryptonian based, and her name is Rain. And she is a character she is based on a character in the comics. And she beats Supergirl into a coma. And so the returning episode has us dealing with how she comes out of that coma. And we're introduced to Brainiac 5, who I'm hoping will go on to become a love interest for Supergirl in the season. Historically, they have had a romantic relationship, and Supergirl has had a turn in the Legion of Superheroes, which the season is taking on that theme. We're now uh, we Mon-El has come back, and now we find out he's married to Saturn Girl, and now we have Brainiac 5, and they have a ship that's been buried next to National City, and there are other beings in hibernation tubes, and these are all the Legion of Superheroes. So it's possible that as the season goes on, other Legion characters will be coming out, and I'm excited to see how they handle that. But we've got the Legionnaire rings. We see Mon-El and Saturn Girl in Brainiac 5 in action, fighting against Rain in this episode. And, it was a good episode. We're seeing how Kara is struggling with her identity, the duality of being Supergirl versus Kara, and trying to keep the personality separate, and how that affects her. So that's going to be an ongoing thing. And the only issue I'm having with this series is the costume design. Supergirl's costume is great. I do take issues with there being no yellow underneath the S. It doesn't pop as much. But for the most, and the tights, she's got like kind of a blackish see-through pantyhose. Like, why the hell are you wearing those? You don't need those. Take them off. But other than that, her costume is pretty spot on, and her costume is fine. There are a couple of faux pas in Superman's costume, but it's okay. But the Legionnaires, I have some issues with, and Rain's costume I also take some issues with. It's not, they're not quite there. The Rain costume is very underwhelming. It comes off as more cosplay. I don't know if it's because it's just a new character and it's not as iconic as Supergirl's costume. But there's just something not there, or there's just something off about Rain's costume, and she just doesn't look that menacing as she's supposed to be. I'm hoping that Saturn Girl, I'm hoping her costume becomes more of the iconic costume that she's had in the comics. She typically has a pink and white costume in the comics, and she just has this black leather suit, and it just really doesn't look like anything. So I'm hoping that they were reluctant to get involved, but they decided to just go ahead and jump in. So maybe that's why their costumes are very ho hum. And then the same thing with Mon-El. He just has this black leather suit, not too different from Saturn Girls, and they just don't pop. They don't really have any kind of iconic personality, and they don't harken back to their comic book designs. And I'm just hoping that at some point, both of their costumes become more reminiscent of what we know from the comics. Brainiac 5 is probably the closest to what he should look like. And I'm liking his characterization on the show. I'm really hoping that he and Kara head into something, and the sparks seem to be there, but we'll see what happens. The Flash came back, and I will always hold a bias with Flash. It's a good show, But I fear that it's starting to head into a direction similar to Green Arrow. Green Arrow just seems to have gone into this kind of flatlining, kind of status quo type of feel. Like it's just run of the mill. There's nothing fresh about it. The direction they're kind of spinning their wheels on certain things, and I kind of feel like Flash is starting to head in that direction. They have gotten away from the speedster rut, which is a good thing, and I do enjoy the Thinker as a villain. But this whole going to prison situation is just tedious, and it's like, oh no, we're gonna get caught up in a, oh, he's in prison for a while kind of storyline. So I'm not looking forward to that, and I just feel like the show is starting to spin its wheels, and I get this feeling of, come on, let's move on with it. Give me something, give me a story. You're not really going anywhere. What's next for you? That's kind of how I feel. I enjoy the show, but I just feel like narratively it's spinning its wheels. I don't know what the Flash can do next, but it's the whole I've got to protect my city storyline that just keeps happening, and he's dealing with metahumans, and it's like there's got to be something else that we can bring to this narrative to keep it fresh and keep it from falling into a rut. A lighter note, we did get the premiere of Black Lightning after The Flash, which I find that kind of appropriate to put those shows back to back. And Black Lightning stars a character from the comic books. He goes back quite a few years. As a matter of fact, a character on the cartoon series named Black Vulcan is actually based on Black Lightning. But for certain licensing reasons, they had to do some twists there to make Black Vulcan a different character from Black Lightning. But that's who Black Vulcan was intended to be on the show. That's who Black Vulcan is based on. So that's how far back Black Lightning goes. And the show, for me, had a pretty strong start. I think the motivations for all the characters are palatable and believable. And even though we have this concept of I've got to protect my city there, it takes a different angle for it, where the titular character has retired from protecting his city, and he doesn't want to do it anymore because of all of the drama and the trouble that it's caused in his life. He wants to stay away from it, but because of the gang violence in the gang that has taken hold of his town or of his city, he's forced to go back into action. And he reluctantly does so. Um, and so to see him go through that struggle, it's quite interesting. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with this show. There is an urban feel to it. It's a primarily black cast, and you do have that. Oh, geez, they have to go urban with it, don't they? But it's the state of the characters, and it's the state of what those characters have to live with and deal with. And there's some truth and reality that comes with that, and there's a statement there. And I think that's what makes the show more palatable, more interesting for me versus some of the other shows, which are kind of starting to float off of their foundations. Like there's nothing to keep them rooted, and that's probably what my issue is with the Flash. And that's what my issue is with Green Arrow. They've kind of lost their rooting, and now they're just trying to move on to the next thing, the next villain, the next challenge, and that rooting isn't there. And I think that's my issue. So that is story number 2. And the final story, we're going to go back to Star Wars. It seems like every show has some kind of Star Wars topic. But it's in the news. It's there. It's something that's there to talk about. And so we have Solo coming out this year in May. And after the controversy with The Last Jedi. Now, The Last Jedi has proven to be a very successful film. It's in the billion-dollar club. You know, there are stories of how it's flopped in China and how it's not making the same kind of money that its predecessor made. But you know, and it's dropped in numbers, and theaters are finally kicking it out of the auditoriums. But Star Wars made money. The Last Jedi made money. It's in the billions, or it's 1 billion point something. So the success is there, and you can't deny that. So the issue comes with Solo. A lot of people are concerned with what's going to happen with Solo. Now, really, most people are looking at Solo as a sort of interim type of film. It's not the saga. So, in a way, a lot of the pressure that's on the saga films will not be put on Solo. So you have Ron Howard directing the Solo movie, and he was brought in after Lord and Taylor were fired or were removed from the film, and Ron Howard had to go back and do heavy reshoots. He had to reshape the film. And there's just been some concerns about, what direction that is, what direction that the film is taking at that point. And a lot of people are concerned with the actor who's portraying Han Solo, if he was the right pick after all. So, with everything that's been happening with The Last Jedi, will the box office droppings of The Last Jedi go on to affect the momentum of Solo? Or will audiences give Solo a chance outside of The Last Jedi? Because there is this sentiment of, nobody asked me if I wanted a Han Solo film. Who asked for a Han Solo film? And so there is the potential that type of sentiment could affect this movie. And we'll see what May brings. We'll see what the case is. But some footage was released in Munich by Disney, and there has been some very positive feedback. It said that Han Solo and Lando Calrissian were portrayed very well. Woody Harrelson did a good job in the footage he was seen in, and that the film has a strong Star Wars feel to it. I'm definitely going to go see it. It's a Star Wars film. I am a Star Wars fan. I grew up with Star Wars, and it would just be a crime if I didn't go see it. I had some other picks for who I wanted as Han Solo, but I just have to keep an open mind, and I haven't really dug into all of the drama and the issues with the film, so we're just gonna hope that Ron Howard did a good job with the piece. I mean, it's Ron Howard. He does good movies. I mean, he's had some stinkers, but he has a fairly decent track record as a director, so I'm sure he was capable hands on this piece, and we'll see what happens with the movie. The other piece of Star Wars news that I'm bringing is Rian Johnson recently spoke about his new trilogy that he's going to start working on. Now, again, The Last Jedi was a success. It's been billed as a success, despite all of the naysaying and the negative reporting that continues to happen. Star Wars has flopped in China. You're still getting that. Star Wars has had a 91% drop. You're hearing all of this negative stuff, but it hit a billion. Now, it's Star Wars. I mean, Phantom Menace, for God's sakes, hit $1 billion, which, in my bias, I consider it the worst Star Wars movie. And it hit $1 billion. So if the Phantom Menace can hit $1 billion, then, what can you say? The Last Jedi was a success. Rian Johnson directed The Last Jedi. Now, even before The Last Jedi came out, Lucasfilm was already praising Rian Johnson and saying how he's going to be doing another trilogy. Now, this other trilogy that he's doing will not be part of the saga films. So, and if you don't understand what that is, you basically have two sets of Star Wars movies that Disney is going to be releasing. Disney will be releasing a Star Wars film annually. That means every year you're going to get a Star Wars movie until the well dries up and the movies are doing so horribly, it's costing Disney money to, it's going in the negative. Disney's not getting any profits. Once Star Wars gets to a point where it's not making money, Disney's going to stop this trend. But until that happens, we're going to get a Star Wars movie every freaking year. So, 2017, we got Episode 8, The Last Jedi. 2018, we're getting Han Solo. 2019, we're getting Episode 9 being directed by J.J. Abrams. And they haven't discussed what we're getting in 2020. We don't know. It could be the Obi-Wan Kenobi movie that's been heavily rumored. There's also Boba Fett has been talked about. So we'll see what they do with 2020 Star Wars film. But up until that point, we have Rian Johnson talking about his trilogy of films. And he really didn't go into what era it was going to take place. He really didn't say much about what this new trilogy was going to be about, other than it was not going to be in the saga. He really didn't give us any new news. But it definitely seems to be that this new trilogy is a go. There is the possibility that some of the extraneous components of the narrative in The Last Jedi will be used to set up this new trilogy, or those extraneous little pieces will have nothing to do with the new trilogy, and we're going to get something like the Sith Wars or the Old Republic. We don't know. Maybe it's about the unknown regions. Maybe it's about Thrawn. There are so many possibilities, but what Rian Johnson did say is that there are so many other things, other stories to tell in the Star Wars universe other than the Skywalker story. And that's kind of something he was pointing at in The Last Jedi. That was an underflowing theme that was in that film. He's just going to expand into that in this new movie or new trilogy. So it looks like the trilogy for Rian Johnson, the Star Wars trilogy, is definitely a go. It will be a non-Skywalker storyline. So the characters are going to be totally new. It will have nothing to do with what we have been seeing in the in any of the Star Wars films that have come out. So to a certain degree, Rogue One, even though it is mostly new characters, can be put into the Skywalker saga. It has a place in there. Han Solo will be a relatively, well, I mean, it's Han Solo and Lando Calrissian and Chewbacca. So from that stance, it kind of is the saga films. It's related to that. So even though the Han Solo story and Rogue One don't directly talk about Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader and Leia, it's dealing directly with the narrative that they're a part of. And so we're going to be getting something totally different, totally new with the Rian Johnson trilogy, in that it's not going to have anything to do with that group of characters at all. It's going to be a totally different perspective on things. So we'll see how he handles that. And that is the news. That was story 3. So let me know your thoughts. We'll see what the next 3 topics will be in the next episode. News is starting to ramp up as the year starts to age a little more here. So I will see you next time in episode 4. Good day.